Alex here with a high conflict child custody video on involving third parties. And the context of that statement is involving them in your high conflict case to resolve some of the conflict, or to be a sort of a safety valve or a release valve on the conflict. Now, this doesn't really apply to friends and family. If you need your friends and family to be there during an exchange or something as a witness, that makes a little bit more sense. The issue that I have is when people involve professionals and try to use the professionals to basically reduce the conflict in their case, basically burdening the professionals with aspects of the parenting that the parents should be able to handle between themselves. The most common example that I use here is teachers or school personnel, and I have a very it happened in my case and I didn't like it. This is really weird because it's weird for a high conflict ex to say that they're going to involve extra people because the conflict is so high. But in a way, it kind of plays into the whole insanity of their way of thinking. All they really have to do to reduce the conflict is grow up and let go of the conflict and work together. But instead they sort of ratchet up the insanity and then say, I'm going to make things better because I'm going to have the teacher make 2 copies of the homework. It's like, why are you giving the teacher extra work? Why don't you just exchange the homework like you're supposed to do? It's this whole this contradiction, this contradictory way of thinking and acting and speaking that makes people going through these cases go so crazy. And involving involving professionals, it basically causes your family to stick out like a sore thumb. And I don't understand what it is. I mean, I end up falling back on mental health and personality disordered ways of thinking just because it makes so little sense. And it's just the audacity and the lack of shame and embarrassment that goes into this kind of thinking that really it makes the case. It's one of the things that makes these cases unbearable to go through. So in my case, I'm going to go ahead and use this example. There's a ton of examples, I'm sure, and I'm looking forward to comments in the comment section below for people with personal experiences on this. But my biggest example is that my ex wouldn't exchange the homework packet. And I say it's the biggest example because this is the one that she got held in contempt of court on and ordered imprisoned. All she had to do was exchange the homework packet. And if she messed up and she forgot it, she could have taken it to school the next day and left it with the front desk. She could have dropped it off at my workplace. She didn't have to see me. There are many ways to go around the issue and make it up if you make a mistake, but she just wouldn't do it, and she wouldn't make it up, and he wouldn't miss his homework. And then one of the things later on that she tried to do was she tried to say that, well, I talked to the teacher, and the teacher's just going to make us both a copy now. And so now what? The teacher's going to have 2 packets that are half filled out, and she's going to have to grade the homework based on both submissions. All you have to do is exchange the packet. Why does the school have to do extra work? But it's this sort of sense of entitlement that kind of drives these people to do what they do. It's we're in the court system and they have to do extra things for us because we're different than the other kids, and it doesn't make any sense. But I've seen this come up enough times that I wanted to do a video on it. If you have an issue, try not to give the school extra work to get around that issue for you and your ex. I say take it back to court, and that's what I did. My ex tried to have the school do other things as well. When it came, like for example, anytime the school would put together like a form that somebody had to fill out, or anytime there was like a newsletter or something like that, she wanted the school to send it to both of our houses. That the parents are supposed to coordinate and exchange this information between themselves. But it was as though by being the source of the conflict and adding conflict to the situation, she could then in turn go and ask these third-party professionals to, fill the gap. And I'm not quite sure what was going on in her head. Maybe she thought it would look more convincing to the court that there was high conflict and she should get custody because, look, all these school personnel were doing things, even though she was the one asking them to do it. Or maybe she wasn't thinking much at all and she just wanted to inconvenience as many people as possible. Who knows? But I feel like some people kind of get this wrong sometimes because most people don't want to go back to court. And so sometimes the non-conflict parent thinks, maybe I'll just have the school make extra copies because they want to resolve the situation and they don't want to go back to court. I really don't think that's the answer. I think the answer is go back to court. If your ex isn't doing something so basic as sharing information and sharing a homework packet, that's a custody issue, or at least a contempt of court issue, that you should go back to court on that. The answer isn't to have the teachers do extra work. It's going to make your child stick out as the kid with two parents that are insane. And how does that, it's just not right. So, I mean, I say deal with it through the court system. When it came to sending my child to school with extra small shirts, and the teacher had to get involved because she had to have an extra pair of clothes to change them into every time our son got dropped off. It's the same situation. Why does the teacher have to take your child to the bathroom and change them every day? The parent should put them in the clothes that fits. And that one had to be done just because a hearing was pending for 9 months. I mean, I took my ex back to court on that issue, and just the hearing is pending. You have to wait 9 months to get to court. I mean, it's not usually that long. My case was complicated. You have to do something in the interim, and that was one of the things that the teacher had to do. That was another example of burdening the teacher with extra work that the parents should be able to deal with on their own. The other two examples I have is like police and CPS. I already talked about this a lot in my video, filing reports on the involvement of police and CPS. And then there's another video I also have called "It's Your Job to Take Action," where I talk a little bit more about that. Two videos there to check out to sort of see what I'm talking about. But a lot of people, they try to involve CPS and the police. I think it's for different reasons. The CPS, I think it's because it's free. People think their kids being abused and neglected. And with CPS, you pick up the phone, you dial a number, you accuse your ex of some stuff, and then off goes the government machinery. You don't have to pay a cent. If you go to court and you use an attorney, you'll have to pay thousands of dollars. But CPS is free, and it takes 2 seconds of your time. And they honestly don't hardly ever do anything. In my case, CPS was contacted 6 times, and they never did anything. And I've talked about this in those other videos. It's because they have a different objective, and that objective is not to get involved in your child custody case and say who should have custody and who shouldn't. That's not their job. They don't want to do that. And if you try to put that on them, they're not going to do it. They're not there for that. They're created to deal with abuse and neglect, and they deal with it a very specific way. It involves permanency plans. It involves foster care. It doesn't involve going into child custody courtrooms. It can happen sometimes, but it's usually not on their initiative. In fact, I think it rarely is. Usually you have a really good attorney that knows that there's an independent investigation going on, and that they summon the subpoena whoever it happens to be that's investigating that issue, and they try to use that CPS worker in your case. It's not usually because the CPS worker jumps out of their seat and it's like, let's go to your court case. I want you to get custody. That doesn't happen. It's usually because they get hauled into court by your attorney or by you if you know how to use the subpoenas. Yes, there's a video on subpoenas. Go ahead and watch that one too if you want to see how they work. Police is even more troubling because I do know that some attorneys recommend people call the police when there's a custody dispute issue. And I do know that there are some judges who don't think it's a big deal. There's other judges and other attorneys who do not recommend that. And my family judge got pissed off when my ex used the police in my case. I stand by the fact that involving the police is involving a third-party professional. I don't think you should do it. The problem here is sometimes the police do resolve the issue. It's not because they have the power to resolve it, though. People think they do, but they don't. The police don't have the power to read all of your custody orders and make a conclusion of law as to who should have what time and what's going on and take a kid from one parent and give him to the other. They don't have that authority or that power, at least not in Nevada. What they do is they use intimidation and coercion tactics to try and get that to happen. And it sometimes does work. And so it makes people think the cops are great. It worked in my case. For example, they'll say, my ex won't let me have the kids and I'm supposed to have them today. And they'll call the cops, and then the cops will come over and they'll say, let me see the order. And they'll read the order. And to them, it'll look like, yeah, you should have your kids. And they'll go to the door, but they won't knock it down. They won't seize the child. They won't arrest the parent. They'll usually say something like, hey, if you don't do this, you might end up going to jail, leaving out the fact that it's not them who's going to take you, but the judge will hold you in contempt. they'll speak a certain way, they'll imply certain things, they'll say certain things, and sometimes the parent will just give up and be scared and say, here, take the kid. But other times they won't. And the cops can't do anything about it, at least not in Nevada. Not without something called a pickup order, which I'll go into in another video. Pickup orders are different. And I talked about this before where, in my case, my ex called the cops and she showed them orders that were expired. And you know, what am I supposed to do? Officer, she showed you an old order. Here's a new one. Well, now the officer has two orders, and he's supposed to determine which one takes effect. And I know some people say, well, that's pretty easy. Just look at the dates. But you guys, it takes them way out of their job category. They're not supposed to be, conducting analysis on multiple court orders and determining which one's enforceable and which one's not. They're not attorneys. They're not judges. No, if there's a problem with some kind of custody issue, I say take it back to court. If you're being deprived of visitation, take it back to court. But again, I see why people do it. Sometimes it works. Sometimes a lawyer tells them to do it. Sometimes their judge is an idiot and they feel like their judge isn't going to do anything about it. I understand where it's coming from, but in this video, I'm going to say, please try not to involve third-party professionals in your custody dispute, and that includes the police. Go ahead and post something in the comments below. I do know that there are some people here who have used the police to positive effect. It sucks that you have to do that. I think they should be out there fighting crime, not dealing with child custody disputes. But I know that people have successfully done it, so I know why people continue to do it. But I'm not a big proponent of it, and I really wish that the judges would get more decisive and take action so that people wouldn't feel they needed to use our police to resolve these issues. I feel like somebody deprives their ex of custody or visitation, they should be held in contempt of court or they should lose custody. It's that simple to me. Put them in jail, fine them, or take their custody away. But don't have the police get involved, because almost always what will happen is it'll start a police war, where one side's like, oh, you called the cops on me, I'm going to call them on you next time, and they'll find some bogus reason to call the cops on them, and then the cops end up getting called all the time to deal with this custody dispute. They get pissed off, sick and tired of it, and it wreaks havoc on the system. Like I said, their resources are already spread thin. They don't need to be involved in child custody disputes, and I really wish more judges had the mindset of my judge, which was to get pissed off. My judge got pissed off and my ex called the cops on me. And like I said, when an issue came up in my case and it was an issue that involved my son and custody and all that, I just took it back to my judge and he held her in contempt of court. And I thought that was epic, for lack of a better word, and I hope that more judges are like that. And I hope that more people have, I know I wanted to hear some comments on people who've used the police to good effect, or who have used the police effectively in their case. I hope to hear that there are some people who have some stories where they did not use the police or CPS. They went back to court and they won, and that, I think, is the best way to do it. And hopefully some people have some comments on good outcomes on them going back to court rather than harassing doctors and teachers and policemen and even CPS, rather than dealing with it in that way. We need to see that works, and I really hope some people here have some examples of that working in their case, because that's kind of what I really wish people would move. That's the direction I really wish people would go into. So with that, I'll go ahead and end this video, and I'll see you guys next time.